In this lesson, we're going to switch from talking about making your website look pretty and say how wonderful your club is to more the functional side of once people are members, how do they sign up for roles? How can you customize the digital agenda to meet your club's needs and the way your club functions? So at this point, you should have a basic digital agenda mocked up. Now, I'm doing this on my demo site, not the test site that we set up earlier. So if you went through the setup wizard and you made some choices, your agenda may look a little bit different than this. So it gave you some choices like, do you want to do table topics, and do you want to do them before the speakers or after the speakers? How many speakers and evaluators you want? So you may have made some basic customizations already. But this is pretty much the plain vanilla agenda that we have here. Now, as an administrator, I'm going to have access to all these functions across the bottom. Now, for your regular members, you may want to limit this somewhat, but by default, it will be limited to sign up for a role myself, suggest a role to another member, or give an evaluation. And then some of these other capabilities are editing the agenda, making assignments to other people, and here I'm talking about editing the roles on the agenda and certain other elements such as notes on the agenda, word of the day, things like that. And then reorganizing is where we're really restructuring the whole agenda, moving things around, maybe adding additional roles, some notes and reminders that we want to have on the agenda. And finally, template and settings is, again, more of the advanced features. One of the things you can do there is if you've made some changes to a particular week's agenda, and then you say, hey, that's how I want all my meetings to function going forward, you can update the base template that's used for all your meetings, and then update all the meetings. I'll get into some of that later. So first just the basics. We come in here and we see an open role and we want to take that role. We click take role and that will be assigned to us now. Change our minds, our schedule changed, or a speaker slot opened up and we want to speak instead of being the vote counter. I can remove myself. So try not to make your VP crazy by signing up for things and then withdrawing all the time, but people's schedules change. There are reasons why you might need to come in or come out. So when we sign up for a speaking role, we will also get prompts to choose our path, our level, our project, add a title, and then you might add your introduction that you want the Toastmaster of the day to read when you were introduced, so that that's right there in the system for them to get. All right, so I'll save that, and it'll say that that is now updated. So that's the basic way as a member you would work with this. Now there is also this function called suggest. Now there's a screen called suggest down the bottom. Also, if I'm looking at a specific open role, I can say suggest, and it will take me in here. And this is a suggestion for grammarian. And I can look through here, and it gives me some clues about when this person last did that role. So we're going to add a note encouraging the member to say, yes, I will come in and fill this role, help fill the agenda. I'll say send suggestion, and this will be sent off as an email message. They'll get an email message that looks like this. It says it's coming from me. I'm nominating for your role. You haven't done this in a couple of months. Please click the button that says take role. And there's no password required to take a role when they do it that way. Now, of course, they can also just come into the website and make their own decision about what role they want to take. But this is a way of helping meeting organizers fill their agenda. And then there is the evaluation tab as well. So you can go in here, choose the speaker, choose the path, choose the project, or when you're looking at a speaker who is on the agenda from this view, from the sign-up view, there is a link that says evaluation form, and this will load it into the system. And it looks like the path and project weren't set, but if the path project were set, then it would load the correct evaluation form for that path and project. All right. So those are some of the basics of how you would work with the agenda. Now, before I get into how to modify it, let's see some of the things that you can do with it. There's this menu up top called Agenda, and the options are Print, Email, Show, Show Introductions, Show Agenda with Contacts. There are a number of others, but those are the main ones. And this is what a filled out agenda looks like for Club Awesome, the original WordPress for Toastmasters site. So this is meant to be a printable agenda. This actually will fit on one page, except that the theme and word of the day text up top was a little bit long, so it's running over to 2 pages. So some of the time it'll fit on 1 page. And so this is going to vary depending on how complex your meetings are, how long your meetings are, how many speakers you have at your meetings. It may be 1 or 2 pages. But also email is very useful. So we can email out the agenda with a note saying, I often customize the subject line to say something of encouraging people to fill in the roles, or I'm saying lots of open roles. Often it's more like, we have 1 open speaker role left. Who wants to grab it? So we're going to send this out as encouragement to people to sign up. We can add a note up top saying, all right. And so this is what they're going to get by email, is this whole map of the plan for the meeting with these links that say one-click sign up. And by default, you're going to send this out to all members. You can also just send it to members without a role, so you're not nagging the people who have already volunteered for something to say, please sign up. Or you can send it to just the officers. I'm going to send it to myself just so that we can see this. And here we are, lots of open roles, and here is the view where we can go in and click to accept a role. This is particularly useful if you're viewing it on your phone. You don't have to remember your password or be able to type it in from your phone in order to come in and sign up for a role. You can use those one-click links. We have a couple of other views where we can go in and we can edit all these elements. So a lot of clubs like to have a theme for each meeting. They might have the word of the day. These could be, 1 or 2 little blanks on the agenda that you leave room for so they can be filled in each week. All right, so I've added that to my theme and word of the day. We have a section that says welcome and introductions. You can leave that as just the heading maybe most of the time, but here is where you might make a note about the area director is visiting, so be on your best behavior. As we scroll down through here in the edit view, we can also assign other members to roles, or we could actually assign a guest to fill a role. So that comes up sometimes. You might get a phone call from somebody or an email from somebody. So rather than going into the website themselves to sign up, they're letting you know that they can take that role. And so you want to record that so that nobody else takes that role instead of them. So we can do all that from this view, including modifying the path and project. Remember, it hadn't been set for this one. So I email them and say, hey, it would be useful if we put in your path and project, and they gave you a little bit of detail to put in. So we'll save that so that is now on the agenda. Now the assign view is sort of the same thing. It's just more compact. So here I'm not seeing all the notes. Here I'm not seeing the option to assign a guest. I use this in my meetings at the end of the meeting where we're trying to decide whether we have enough people signed up for next week and we're asking for volunteers. During meeting time, I can go into this assign view and quickly plug people into roles. Now, if I assign a speaker over here, I'm not putting in path and project, but I can encourage them to go into the website and do that later. But meanwhile, we're locking that role in for them. Now, organize is where we really get into some superpowers. And so there are decisions you can make about whether you want to allow just anybody to come in and do that, or whether you want to reserve that for just the officers, just the club website administrator. But this is where we're going to restructure our meeting. And so something like we're going to take the table topics portion of the meeting and we're going to move that until after speakers. Maybe because we have a longer speech and we're not sure how much time we're going to have for table topics. Or actually, maybe we'll move it to the very end. After the evaluations, we'll come back and have some table topics. And if we scroll down in here, we should see Topics Master has been moved down to after the evaluators. We can also add a role to the agenda. So maybe before the Toastmaster of the day starts introducing everything, we have an invocation. So that's not on our standard list, but we can put in the label invocation. So we'll let somebody choose whether to give a serious invocation or to tell a joke, but it's something to get the meeting started. So we'll click Add, and that custom role will be added here, and we can decide how much time to allow for that on the agenda. So maybe that is a 5-minute activity. And similarly, when we go through and look at speakers, if we change the number of speaking slots from 3 to 4, it does the calculation of 4 times 7, so 5 to 7 minute speeches. That would be 28 minutes. But maybe we want to allow room for somebody to give a 10-minute speech every once in a while, so we'll make that 30 minutes. And then padding time is an optional thing you can squeeze in there. That's supposed to allow time that is not available for members to sign up for as speakers, but it's a little extra time for the transition between speakers and the introductions. So it's a way of just padding out your agenda. But one thing you should notice is that if I change the time associated for one role, the start time for the next role will change too. So we allow 2 minutes for the grammarian, and this went from 7:14 to 7:16 as the start time for the the next event in our meeting. So this is a way that you can plot this out to see, if the meeting needs to fit in an hour, then we've built in too many activities to do that. So this is supposed to be a planning document for you, as well as just something to allow people to sign up on the agenda. Now, things don't always go according to plan, but they're going to go closer to plan if you have a plan up front. So this is your planning document for how you want your meetings to be structured. And down the bottom here, it does say, based on the allotted time, this will end at 8:12. If that's too long, then I need to tighten things up. If actually we've allowed an hour and a half for our meetings, then we have room for maybe another activity. Now, I showed inserting a role. Another thing we might do is insert a break. So after speakers and before the evaluators come up, maybe we want to have a 5-minute break. So that's not a role, but I can make that a note on the agenda. So here's my agenda note. And I can click edit here to say what that note should be. It's going to be 5-minute break. Okay. And time allowed for that will be 5 minutes. So now our meeting ends at 8:17. And so you can work through this process, organizing your meeting. Now, right now I'm making changes for a single meeting event. And you may need to do that sometimes. You have a longer speech coming up, or you have the area director visiting and they need to take time on the agenda. So maybe you need to adjust the number of speakers you're going to plan on having. But in addition to having individual meeting events, we have an event template that defines our standard plan. So here's an option to switch to the event template if we want to make changes to multiple upcoming meeting agendas. Now, we have a choice. We can either sort of experiment with it at the individual meeting and we can impose that on future meetings, or we can just switch over to the template view. And it tells me up top that this is a template. This is not a real meeting date. I think that's supposed to be the date of the original Toastmasters formation meeting back in 1924. That's probably not actually when you're going to hold your meeting, unless you have a time machine handy. But you can go through here and make your changes. And then when you have something that you're happy with, there's this link that says Create Update, which will bring you to this screen that will show you all the upcoming meetings that are already in the system. This one has been modified independently, those changes that we just made. But we want to make all our upcoming meetings follow the same plan. So we'll do check all, we'll do add update from the template. And so now we have meetings plotted out several months in advance according to the meeting schedule that we set up front, which was every Wednesday. And we should be able to go into any of those meetings. And again, if I had changes that I need to make to this specific one, I could do that here. The other way that you can update your plan based on a specific meeting, so you tried it one week, it worked really well, that's how you want to organize all your meetings from now on. So you go into that specific meeting event, that organization, and we can go over to template settings. Now again, this is only available to the website administrator and other people that they've allowed to have access to it. And we can say we're currently editing an event based on a template. We can switch again to editing that template, or we can just update the template based on the work we've done so far. So let's say that's what we want to do. So this will copy over our current meeting plan to the template, and it gives us a prompt again to do the create update routine to update all the events that are already in the system to the new plan. Down here, there are some additional options for the administrator to make changes. So we can say that all members can edit signups. And I often like to do both of these things. I would tend to turn on all members can organize the agenda. And the reason I would turn that on for everybody is you change from week to week who is the Toastmaster of the day. It would be good if the Toastmaster of the day could make small changes to the agenda if they need to. Certainly be good if they get a phone call from somebody saying, yes, I can take that speaking role, that they can plug that person into the agenda. So I tend to like to leave this more open. Some other club leaders, VPEs, may want all the assignments to kind of come through them, and so they can keep that a little bit more limited. So it's your choice what you want to allow other members to do, but they definitely would only be able to access this template and settings screen if they have very high level privileges, if they're an editor of the site or an administrator of the site. And down here, if I do have, because I do have editing roles, I can edit the date and time in settings, or I can open this document in the WordPress editor. Now, what I was showing you on the organize screen, this is essentially my custom version of a block editor, of the standard WordPress editor. Now, you can actually edit this in the regular editor. And the way you would do that is I would click here. And I actually had been training people on doing it this way. But a number of people told me that they found it kind of confusing. Because if I want to add a block in this view, well, I have all these other options here that are really more appropriate for formatting my website, for creating blog posts. I really have to kind of dig to find the Toastmasters specific stuff. The organize view is meant to be simpler for everyone. Initial feedback that I've gotten from club webmasters and VPEs is that they find this simpler for them to work with. I think it's simpler for me to train people on too, because instead of having all those extraneous blocks, when I want to insert something, I can either insert a role, either a predefined role or a custom role, or I can insert one of a limited list of different blocks. So I already showed you adding an agenda note for something like a 5-minute break. There's the editable note, which is what I use over here for word of the day. So that's something that can be edited by pretty much anybody. You have to be an editor, as we don't want to allow everybody to be able to edit the home page of the website, but we do want people to be able to edit the theme and word of the day if they are the Toastmaster of the day. So an editable note is something you would add for that purpose. A sign-up note only appears on the sign-up form. It doesn't appear on the agenda. So a sign-up note might be something that you want to put there for guests at your meeting. It might want to be a reminder that you don't want people signing up week after week to speak. You want them to allow for some variety. You don't want anybody monopolizing the agenda in that way. There is this speaker evaluator table, which is for displaying the speakers and evaluators side by side. One particular club requested that. And then there's this widget for tracking absences. So I include that toward the bottom of every agenda. And we should be able to see that over here. So I can say I'm going to be absent. By default, it's for just this one meeting. But I could also say that I'm going to be absent for the next several meetings. And this is just a way of saving that intention on the site so that people aren't trying to get me to sign up for roles when actually I'm out of town for several weeks. This is all meant to make the VPE more productive, make the club more productive. I was a VPE when I started working on this whole grand project, and so I want these to be tools that you will find effective for running your Toastmasters club.